Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Accredited Staging Assistant course with StagedHomes.com. This is a supplement to the 2 days you've already attended in class or via live webinar. And we're going to go through some things that you may have learned in class or going through your manual, and there's also some additional information we wanted to go through. And I am Jenny Norris. I'll be your trainer for today. I am the president and CEO of StagedHomes.com. And I'm really happy to be able to share this added info with you to help you be the best staging assistant to the companies you work with that you can be as an ASA from StagedHomes.com. So with that, we're going to cover today, we're going to do a brief review of the 2-day course, an overview of the staging industry just to make sure you have that information. We'll talk about what your designation means. Requirements for getting started as a business person, how to market yourself to get in touch with and get hired by existing staging companies, income expectations, what does it mean to be part of a team, and we'll talk about occupied home staging, and finally vacant home staging. All right, so with that, you learned hopefully in your ASA course, the 2 days that you attended, staging is a real estate service. And that's really crucial because, of course, people that aren't familiar with what we do and so forth, they believe that we are decorating and designing houses. And it's not that there aren't crossover elements and some things that are common as far as placement and so forth. But the goal of staging is to get a house sold. So staging is a real estate service. And the whole reason we have businesses and the reason businesses exist in the staging world is to help properties sell and sell at the best price and in the quickest time. So staging is not decorating or design. And hopefully, if you remember from class, decorating and design are personalizing, and staging is all about depersonalizing because we don't know who the buyer is. And so staging is about taking the layers away from an occupied house so that a buyer coming in can envision themselves living in the house, or if it's a vacant property, creating tasteful groupings that don't swallow up a room and overcrowd it, but allow a buyer to understand how to position their furniture and also create an emotional connection to the property. So it's about depersonalizing because we don't know who the buyer is. All we know is somebody has money to spend in a neighborhood, they're looking at this type of property. We can often identify target demographics. And so based on where the property is located, the price of the property, and so forth, and the type of property, we can identify if it's a, boomer, a Gen X, a millennial, the Gen Z people who are going to start entering the market. So we can identify that and then gear the staging towards that target buyer. So that's one of the biggest differentiators, or the biggest, is that we don't know who the buyer is. So it's all about presenting a broadly appealing property versus decorating and design, which is really catered to the person who lives in the home, who's paying for the service, if they get what they want, whether we think it's tasteful or not, because they're not selling. Staging is also a proven marketing tool for realtors and for the property itself, the houses. So realtors are going to use staging as a way to get a listing. They'll be marketing themselves as far as the services they offer differently than their competition. And then a lot of them include the staging as a value add, and or connect their client with their trusted stager who's part of their team and not an official hired person, but just somebody they can refer to. And then the property itself, when it's staged, it stands out from its competition because when a house is staged, it looks better, feels better than the one that isn't staged. So it's a dual purpose when it comes on the market. And so before it ever hits the market, before the realtor ever gets the listing, they're marketing themselves, that they understand staging as a benefit. And that's why the realtors are in the classes that we teach, because they need to know how to communicate to the homeowner and also understand the value of staging, be able to share that as one of their value-added services. Then, of course, when the house is staged and listed, it will stand out from its competition and or compete equally with other properties that are staged. Staging is all about selling space and not stuff. And so when we're working with clients, and you may be working on occupied houses or vacant properties, either one, we want to sell flow and floor plan, but we don't want to leave a house stark and empty. So there always has to be furniture in the rooms to dictate the size and the scale and the purpose of the room. And then all the little things that we personalize with, we put on our shelves and so forth. People call that clutter. They're just personal items and so forth. We're not selling all of that. So we do eliminate and purge a lot of the little things that take up visual space whether it's they're on the floor, or on the walls, or on surfaces. Staging is a viable business. So the first business probably got started in the late 90s. 1999 is when it first course officially launched. So people could set up staging companies and learn how to run a business. And so it is a viable business. It's been around now 20 years. And there's stagers making a lot of really great money. And it's a well-oiled machine for a lot of people as far as how they run their companies. And I can speak for myself. I've had a staging company for 17 years now, and it supports our family, and you know, we do well, but there's a lot of moving parts to it. So there are times that it can be incredibly stressful. And so I not only run Staged Homes as president and CEO, I'm also the chairwoman for IHOS, which we'll talk about that in a second. And then I've always had a staging company. So I do have a team in place that does the day-to-day setups and so forth, but I'm still involved, and it can be stressful. It's fun and rewarding, but there's a lot of work that goes into getting the business. And so you wanting to be an assistant for somebody else is wise if that's not a role you want to take on, being the rainmaker, as they call it. The key to success in staging success, is communication. So communication can be body language, it can be the words you say and so forth. And so anytime you are working with a client or talking about what you do, you want to be prepared and have your script written down as far as your little 10-second commercial we talk about. When somebody says, what do you do? Well, you know, I don't want you to just say, well, I'm a staging assistant. I help do stuff in houses. You want to say, I'm an accredited staging assistant. I earn my accreditation so I can work with other successful home staging companies to help prepare vacant and occupied houses for sale. And you can rewind this and you can write that down. So I just said it off the cuff. But anyhow, body language, tone of voice, your timing is all crucial in how effective you are with your clients or just people in general. And what we learned is 90% is how you say it, your body language, your tone. And it's really only 10% what you say. So your body language and your expressions and so forth are conveying a lot more than what your words are. And so people are really observing that. So watch yourself, and if that's something you need to work on, use a mirror, practice so that you are smiling when you talk, or aren't just like a stiff piece of wood. You know, move around, and you can use gestures and so forth. And then your tone of voice is really important. I've taught the webinars for a long time, and then Kathy Fouts took over for the company when I stepped into running the company. And the webinar, doing something like this is hard because you're not in front of me. So I can't see any kind of reaction or response, and yet I'm still moving my hands and my tone of voice. If I just talk like this the whole time, you guys would be asleep. So you want to use tone inflection when you're sharing something in a conversation, because it keeps it more interesting, and the cadence of your words. So practice all of that, because you may, you may be asked to share something with a client, or, you know, who knows, just in your general life. And so these are all good tips just in general about communication, not specifically just for staging. The number one foundation of being an ASA is honor the client and their possessions. And you learn that in class. That's the number one foundation for ASPs as well, and ASPREs. So we honor the client and their possessions at all times. You're going to walk into possibly properties where it's shocking how people live. And when people are selling, they're pretty stressed out, and their house can be in disarray. They could be in a stressful situation that's put them in the need to sell. And so we walk into all of this, and vacant houses, they're empty, so we're not anything to have to honor, but we still want to honor the property itself and not do any damage. But occupied houses, people collect really strange things. They may have odd items that they are, you know, really happy with, or maybe it's some heirloom piece, and you might be thinking in your head, that thing's really ugly, or that thing's not even worth any money at all because it's just this little trinket, but it could be something that's really sentimental. So no matter what our clients have in their houses, I don't ever make fun of it or am critical, and I might have thoughts in my head, but that client's never going to hear me say that. And instead, what you hopefully you learned is to compliment clients. Find something to compliment, and of course, whoever you're working with should be teaching you the protocol of how they operate their companies and so forth. And I'll preface this by saying that not everybody in the staging world, of course, has gone through one of our courses. We have a huge number that have, but there's a lot that have not. And so depending on where you live, you may actually end up working for a home staging business owner who's never been through this class, and they've never learned this foundation. And so I'm not suggesting that you start schooling them. However, watch and observe how they handle clients and so forth if you're involved in that process. And I would just ask you to always honor the client, and however you treat their things or how you speak with them, even if you think their house is ugly and they have no taste at all or gaudy, overdone, whatever it is, we're going to honor them. And then there are ways that we know to get things removed and or self-relatability. So something that you can say, oh gosh, I dealt with the same thing. This is what I found works. They don't feel like they're the only one dealing with that situation. So an overview of the staging industry, of course, it started in 1972 in Seattle. I hope you learned that in class. And it was birthed by Barb Schwartz, who was a realtor who included staging of her listings, and she had a design background, so she could visually see what needed to happen. And then in 1999, the very first courses were taught. Staged Homes was the very first company to ever teach a home staging business course, where somebody could learn how to be a home stager and have a company, and how to provide services and what to provide and how to price their services. So this was the first class that was ever taught. 1999 was the first year. The first association for the home staging industry was founded at the same time. So IAHSP, we say IHOSP, which hopefully you learned in class, so IHOPs like the pancakes, but International Association of Home Staging Professionals. And you are all members of IHOSP as ASAs. And the association has thousands of members worldwide. It is the largest and longest running association in the industry. So the important thing about IHOSP is we have a code of ethics. We have a lot of resources for our members available, and we have different events and so forth that we do. So again, home staging is a viable industry. There are large companies that are super successful. People have gotten into you know, giant warehouses housing furnishings and decor. Some stagers do design work, some have retail stores. I mean, there's a lot of variation in what happens, but there's a lot of money being made in staging. And of course, we work very, very hard to capture that. It's all about marketing. And so the company owner that you're going to plug into, that's their role. And so they need to make sure that business is coming in. And for me, I feel a lot of pressure often because it's not just me that I'm supporting in my own family, but now the team that works with me also. And so I need to make sure that there's enough business coming in to get rid of that thing, enough business coming in so that people can pay their bills. That's a lot of pressure on me. When it was just me by myself and you know, doing what I could as a solo person, whether or not I had staging work, it didn't really impact anybody else except maybe my own immediate family. So know that whoever you're plugging into as a company owner, they have a lot of things that you'll never really participate in as a part of their team that they're responsible for. But it is an exciting industry, and it's definitely growing, and it's needed. And one of the things we like about it is once somebody stages their house for sale, they're always going to want to stage their house for sale. So it's not a thing that goes away or reduces in need, and it's not a fad. So it's a great industry. There's over 3,000 stagers nationwide, and then you start going into Canada, over to Europe, Japan, Latin America. We have South Africa, Australia, China. So, I mean, sky's the limit as far as any place properties are bought and sold, staging is taking hold. So IHOSP is truly global, and we're really excited about all the members that are joining us around the world, not to mention the thousands of members we have in North America alone. Now, this 20-80, 20% of the top businesses do 80% of the business. And that 80-20 rule is, you know, you can apply that to just about anything that you do in life. You know, when it comes to business, they say 20% of your activity is going to yield 80% of your results. So business coaches will talk about 20% being like lead generation and actively talking to clients versus busy work. So I can share this about Staged Homes and IHOSP, the leadership team that comprises both entities. We have an advisory board for Staged Homes. We also have the IHOSP leadership team and also the board that serves at the international level. Everybody that's on the leadership teams and the boards, we all have businesses. So everybody runs a successful staging business. We're not a company that talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk, or an association that talks the talk and doesn't walk the walk. And there are other groups out there where that's the case. And no matter how, you know, people are very nice to do a great job. But however, I firmly believe, and others would agree with me too, that you can't teach what you don't know. And the fact that we're all in the trenches currently experiencing what's happening in the staging industry means that we're better equipped to serve our members because we know what you're going to need. So staged homes, leadership, that's all true about that, and IHOS, so everybody who's on the board is running a business. So that's very exciting that we can share that, because again, you can't teach what you don't know, and anything we do for the industry impacts us personally too, so we're going to make sure that it's of benefit to everybody. Staging is global, as I just said, so we've got great groups. There's IHOS Europe overseas, and we've launched IHOS in 6 or 7 different countries now, or regions of the world, and that'll continue to grow. So what does your designation mean? Accredited staging assistant. What do these words mean? Well, an accreditation, you are accredited, that's the highest form of training in our industry, which is true. So it has to come from a school, and Staged Homes is a training school. We are licensed that way. The states where we teach, we have to file paperwork and so forth, and we are considered a school. In fact, when we teach at real estate schools or other real estate boards, we are a school, and that's why we can submit CE credits on behalf of the agents. And so that's an accreditation has to come from a school. Now, there's certification, you're going to hear that word, and that is you're also certified and you're also designated. So you have all three. A designation, ASA, that's the acronym, and that is trademarked. So when you put that on a business card, make sure to have a little R symbol there, same as the spelled out version. But a designation is just initials. So you'll notice when you start looking around people's business cards or online, when people have initials after their name, that usually denotes education. So think about MD, PhD, MA, BA, BS. They're all Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts. They are credentials. And so in our world, we have the ASA. We've got the Accredited Staging Professional Accredited Staging Professional Stager, Accredited Staging Partner Real Estate Agent, so ASP, ASPRE, and then the ASPM is the Accredited Staging Professional Master. So the Master's course is a completely separate course for staging business owners to really refine and advance their skills and their business success. So real estate agents have a bunch of initials too. So they could be specific to dealing with a niche market like SRES, a Senior Real Estate Specialist, or ePro, means that they're savvy on tech and so forth. So in our world, and we are tied into the real estate world, designations do matter. And so you do want to have ASA, IAHSP after your name on any business card that you might produce. So IAHSP, you can see it down here in the corner. It is trademarked, so the OR symbol comes after the initials, and then if you choose to spell out, I am a member of the International Association of Home Staging Professionals, that whole International Association of Home Staging Professionals, after that word professionals, the R symbol is also there, so it is trademarked. The reason I share that with you is because it's not inexpensive to get trademarks, and so we want people to honor them, because the last thing I want is for people to start using our things that are trademarked without knowing or without using the registered symbol. And you are trained. You're trained to be an effective part of a home staging company, team as an independent contractor or an employee. And we'll talk about which role, what that means depending on which role you are in. You're also part of the Staged Homes family, the most experienced home staging educational company in the world. So we've graduated the most people through our courses. Most people who have classes out there can trace their roots back to Staged Homes as a student, a former trainer, or what have you. And so we support our colleagues. We're here for you. After class, if you have any questions, you can email your trainer. You can email me. After you finish this webinar, if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out. We also have the Staging University for you. So the Staging U has a lot of resources on it, and you have access to a lot of those as an ASA. So the pictures, for example, from our class galleries, you have access to look at those, and that's one of the best ways to train your eye for placement and occupied houses and even vacant properties to know what to do. So we have a lot of tools available, and we are here for you. And then, of course, I've already talked about IHOS, IAHSP, the largest and longest running home staging association in the world, and that's very true. We're more than double the size of the next largest association, and we are truly global, where the others might have a smattering of people here and there. We have active, growing chapters and members all over the world. All right, requirements for getting started. First of all, a business license. Now, depending on how you want to structure your business and how you want to plug in to establish companies, if you decide you want to be an independent contractor, and we'll talk about what that means coming up, you'd have to get a business license, because they're going to have to pay you and the money's got to go somewhere, and you're going to be taxed on it. So typically, you could come up with a company name. It could be your name, so I'll use myself as an example, Jenny Norris Staging. I could file a business license. Never going to be actively marketed for the most part, because you're going to be plugging into an existing company, and their name is the one that's going to be marketed. But they need to know how to pay you. Now, if you're an employee of a company, you probably don't have to have a business license. So that would be a step that you could avoid. Business licenses are not expensive, but they can be, they take time to get. You can file online, and then you got to follow your state protocol for what you have to do, where you have to file. So I live in Colorado now, and we file at the state level. When I lived in California, we filed at the city level, which was pretty amazing to me, because that didn't even mean the county wouldn't even know if someone else had the same name as I did. So it gets a little confusing with some of these states who don't have people file at the state level, which is really the best, because what they do is they check to make sure no one else has that same company name. And if they do, they say to you, I'm sorry, you can't, there's a confusingly similar name, or that name is already taken, pick something else. And so sometimes it's at the county level. Whatever it is, follow the protocol, and you could do some research online and figure that out. Now, if you are going to be an independent contractor, you will complete what is called a W-9, and this basically is a form, and you can find it online. You can print one of those off for free, a W-9, or the person you're working with can provide it to you. And so it's your information, personal information, your name, address, social security number goes on there, and so then they have that. So when they have to file taxes by January 30th of every fiscal year, they need to issue 1099s to people who work with them who earn more than $600. So if you earn a $601, you will be issued a 1099. If you earn $600 or $599, you don't get a 1099. They're still going to report income as being paid out, but they're not going to issue an official document. So that 1099 is sent to you, and it's also filed with the company owner's taxes, so it is reported to the IRS. And I share that with you because the last thing you want to do is have somebody reporting that you earn money, and you don't declare it on your side. You don't report it on your side. You're going to get in trouble for that. So always be on the up and up with your paperwork. When you're an employee, you'll fill out what's called a W-4. And this is another form, personal information, name, address, social security number, and so forth. And that employer keeps that on file, and they use this to set up payroll. And so you'll be, whatever payroll system they use, whether they run it themselves through QuickBooks, they have Paychecks or ADP, your information is going to go in the system, and you'll be getting paychecks as a employee every 2 weeks or however they have it set up, and you'll have deductions and taxes and so forth taken out of your pay. All right? So in general, we'll talk about compensation. We'll talk about the difference of what you can expect to get paid in this position or this position, whether you're employee or independent contractor. Staging insurance is important in our industry. So you need liability coverage as an independent contractor. As an employee, you should be protected under the company's insurance policy, but I would be asking that when you're speaking to people that you're going to be working with. Ask them about if something happens in the house and you're responsible, like you damage the property, is there a liability coverage to protect you from having to come out of pocket or protect the company? So again, an employee, the employer should have a liability coverage, and all employees should be covered underneath that. An independent contractor may not be the case. So you'd have to ask the company owner, what kind of liability coverage is there? Do I need to get staging insurance, or can I be added to your policy? And any policy can have people added to it. It sometimes does increase the premiums. However, it can be done. In general, you guys need to know that a staging insurance policy for liability, $1 to $2 million in coverage, is about $500 a year. So it's not that much, about $42 a month for protection. And it also covers furnishings, decor, artwork, furniture, and so forth, whether it's in transit, in a house, or what have you. Now, you're probably not going to be providing any of that, so you might be able to get a reduced rate on that policy, less than $500. We have a great company that has set these policies up for us. And the main thing is you want to protect yourself, because if you're an independent contractor and you damage a property you're working in, you don't have coverage and you're not covered under the company owner's policy, you will be held responsible. So one of my team members years ago, for example, she was driving her SUV, she was backing up into the driveway, and she hit the house. There was a column in the front of the house. It was like chicken wire and stucco. Well, she hit that with her SUV and put this big old dent in it, because it was, cheap construction, because it was just decorative. It really wasn't functional. And so thankfully she had insurance. So The deductible was about $500. The repair was more than that, and the insurance took care of it, and she had to pay the deductible, but she was responsible because she was driving the car. It was her fault, etc. Now, had she not had insurance, she would have had to pay for the whole thing out of pocket, or somebody may have tried to come after me, but I'm not responsible for people who aren't employees or they're independent contractors. So you need to take responsibility for yourself and make sure that you're covered and have these conversations. Don't never assume anything. Always make sure to ask the questions. An injury waiver. I have all of my team members sign an injury waiver, and is whether you like this part of it or not, most company owners are not going to pay medical, and if you get injured on a staging, they're not going to pay to have medical treatment for you. My team signs an injury waiver. If something happens to them on a staging, that's on them. They have their own medical policies and so forth. They would have to enact those, that I'm not responsible because they're independent contractors. Even employees, unless a company is over a certain number of employees, and I think I want to say it's like 40 or 50, I could be wrong on that, but small companies are not required to have medical. So again, if you're injured on the job, there's disability in workers' comp and so forth. However, if it's something major, you got to make sure that you're covered health-wise. So if there's a car accident, again, independent contractors, that's on them. I'm not responsible. An employee, that would be different, especially if you're working on behalf, if you're driving on behalf of a staging, whether it's in your vehicle or a company vehicle, that would be something that the employer should cover. But these are the questions you want to be asking. And you'll have to decide whether you want to be an employee or an independent contractor based on how much you want to work, your availability, and your earnings, how much you want to earn. You might be asked to sign a non-compete or non-disclosure. This is very typical in any industry. So these are legal documents, a non-compete and a non-disclosure. So non-disclosure, that one is 100% enforceable, and anybody's going to ask you to sign that if they have these things in place. Basically just protects their company process, any kind of confidential information you might be privy to, and that you're not going to disclose and tell everybody about how this company operates over under their competition or publicize it somewhere that could harm the company. That's a non-disclosure. A non-compete basically protects the company owner. If you choose to leave, and let's say you go to a different company and as an employee or independent contractor, or you do decide you want to have a staging business and you want to move into the ownership role, and in that case, you would come back to the third day of our class to learn how to run your business. Let's say that happens. Well, now you're considered competition to this person you used to work with. So they would have had a non-compete in place if they're smart, and the non-compete protects their client base. It also protects anybody who works at their company. So you can't go steal their clients, and you can't take people, lure them away from the company. That was a non-compete, protects them from that. And that is enforceable 100%. What's not enforceable is them telling you, you can't run a business in this town. Some states will allow a geographic lockdown, like a 50-mile radius or 20-mile radius from, wherever the person lives or their hub of business. They can put that in writing. It is hard to enforce depending on what type of city it is. If there's, let's say it's a small place and a 50-mile radius would mean you didn't have any houses to even knock on a door. That's not enforceable because you have a right to earn a living in the field in which you're trained. So, and that goes for any industry, high tech, whatever it is. People sign non-competes all the time, but they have a right to earn a living. What is protected, as I already said, is the client base and any other people on the team. So don't be afraid of signing these. I would have you sign them if you worked for me as a team member, and it's important because I have to protect what I'm building. And as long as everybody's honest and people aren't being sneaky, then this will never come into play. If you do choose to leave and you go someplace else, know that these are enforceable, but hopefully wherever you go, they'll have their own clients and they're not going to be asking you to try to steal somebody else's. And we always want to have integrity in our lives, act with integrity. And so that would never come up when you have that as one of your core values. Lastly, keeping track of your mileage, because you can deduct this. So you're driving around in your car, getting back and forth to work or to the warehouse or what have you. Now, when you're an employee, I don't think you cannot deduct your mileage because you're going to your place of business. So it depends on how that's set up. If there's a warehouse you go to every day or something that you're doing as an employee of a company, you cannot deduct your mileage getting from your house to wherever that is. But if you're in your own vehicle, you're being asked to drive from the warehouse to a job site, that should be deductible, or you can get reimbursed for expenses for gas and so forth. as an independent contractor, you keep track of your mileage, and at the end of the year, you'll do the allowed deductible, the mileage deductible on the number of miles you drove. So, for example, let's say it's 58 cents per mile is what the IRS gives. You drove 10,000 miles for that year in your vehicle. You're going to get a tax write-off of $5,800 for your vehicle, and that covers the gas, the wear and tear, the maintenance, and so forth. And that's usually a better formula than doing actual. And actual means every time you change the tires, change the oil, you're keeping track of all those receipts and writing those off at the end of the year. So talk to a CPA if you want, accurate data for where you live and to determine what's best for you. But you can keep track of your mileage and can be deducted. And so again, that is something that, as you are talking to these companies, find out how they deal with that. Do they compensate you for miles driven and gas? Do they just say, no, you need to take the write-off, or even as an employee, what's expected of you? What are you going to get reimbursed for? So an employee, there'll be more things provided to you by the company owner, and because of that, you're going to make less money on an hourly basis if you were to calculate out that way versus an independent contractor. That's just a general guideline. So marketing yourself to these companies. So you got accredited, you're excited, you want to be out there, maybe you're already out there working with people, so determine what role you want to play in the staging process. So, you're going to be interviewing the companies, they'll be interviewing you, and they're going to be telling you this is where we need help. And so you might start out at an entry-level staging assistant, and then you need to ask, what kind of movement is there as I prove my worth and value? What other roles are there that I could be into? So, listen, we all start at the bottom. In the very beginning was just me. I was the one vacuuming things or ironing the bed to make sure there's no wrinkles, or taking tags off the stuff. And it's not necessarily the fun, creative stuff, but it's all part of what we have to do. So whatever role you're going to be playing, they're going to be sharing with you what's expected. You want to research the staging companies in your area. Look at the profile online, check them out on Facebook, but they should have a website. If they are serious about business, you have to have an online presence. And so find out, take a look at their pictures, see what kind of work they do, what kind of properties do they stage, so that you're informed before you go out and meet with these people. And then you got to say, why would a staging company want to work with you? What's special about you that they would be excited about? Okay, so one of the first things, of course, is your credentials, that you didn't just roll out of bed one day after watching a bunch of HGTV and then start calling and saying, hey, I think I really would like to stage and have you hire me. So you actually have invested in your education. I know some of you were put through the course by the person you're going to work with. And so, but one of the biggest reasons why somebody wants to work with you is because you have been educated and you understand the staging process, you understand the industry, and you have knowledge and terminology and so forth. So that's why they want to work with you. Plus, you're probably a fabulous person and, would be a good asset to the team. You're a hard worker, you're diligent, whatever it is. So, be prepared with some of those, that information, some of those adjectives. If you want to be an independent contractor, find several companies in the region and let them know you're available. So an independent contractor versus employee, an independent contractor technically has to have a second form of income coming in. So my team members, for example, they all have different forms of income. They have second forms of income, some maybe even third. So I'm not their only source. So two of them have part-time jobs at Pottery Barn. Another one has the social media for a different company and then also stages. And another one, the spouse has income. So you want to make sure that you're not the only, that company you're working with is not your only source of income, because technically in the eyes of their IRS, then they are an employer. And the difference between employer, and a company that hires independent contractors, when I'm an employer, I have to pay taxes, disability, workers' comp, take all the taxes out, do the payroll, and that is expensive. Just to run payroll, that could be thousands of dollars a year. And then they have to, the insurance and so forth, they have to cover the workers' comp and disability. So those are all costs of having employees, which means they have less money available in general to pay people that work with them, because it's not like unlimited money's coming in. So they're going to have a set budget for their team, their employees, and they're going to figure out, this is your salary, or this is how much you're going to get paid hourly as an employee, versus an independent contractor, you're paid by the project. So you're not paid hourly as an independent contractor. They should tell you you're going to earn $75 or $150 today or $100 today for what you're going to be doing. And it doesn't matter if it takes you 1 hour or 15, that's all you're going to get. And so there is a difference, and I recommend that you do a little research for your state to figure out what the parameters are, independent contractor versus employee, because you don't want to be considered an independent contractor being treated like an employee. What I mean by that is if you're told when to show up, you need to be here at 9 a.m., you have to be at this address, this is what you're going to be doing, I'm going to be supervising you, and it's all dictated, there's not a lot of wiggle room, you're an employee, even though they might think that you're an independent contractor, because they told you specifically where you have to be, at what time, what you'll be doing as far as the work, and there's not any freedom for you just to kind of make decisions on your own. Versus an independent contractor, with our team, we have a calendar, they can see what's going to be happening that day, but I don't tell them, you need to show up at 10, you need to get these things, you need to do that, you need to do it this way. I don't do any of that. It's basically they know where they have to be, they determine when they're going to show up, they know it has to get done, and they make decisions on what inventory they want to bring, what colors they want to use, where they're going to place stuff, and they've all been trained and so forth. I have all accredited staging professional stagers. I don't have any ASAs, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that they are independent contractors because I'm not dictating all of this. And even being asked to wear a t-shirt or a company hat or any kind of branded wear, technically that makes you an employee. So these are things that are important for you to know. It really wouldn't hurt, it's not going to hurt you if somebody's violating this. It's going to come back to bite the company owner who isn't properly categorizing the people that work with them. And it can be very, very costly to them. So I just share this with you because you want to be asking the right types of questions when you're engaging initially with these companies. If you want to be an employee, find companies who are hiring. If you want to be an independent contractor, again, find companies who want to hire independent contractors. Develop your portfolio that you can show prospective companies. So, you know, your staging talent, maybe you can take some close-ups of stuff in your house that you've done, or maybe your living room's really cute, you take a picture, so they want to know that you have a flair. Staging is a process, so it can be taught as far as the steps. You know, we start with the furniture and what's going to go on the floor, and you kind of build up from there. However, it's not cookie cutter, and you know they're going to want to know that you have an eye. And so initially, you might have more scrutiny and being supervised by the lead team leader for the staging project. And then over time, as trust builds, you'll have a lot more, hopefully, flexibility, and then maybe you'll work your way up to lead stager. So it just depends on what role you want to play. But initially, if you have something you can show about what you do and why you love the industry, that's always beneficial. All right, income expectations. Now, I'm not going to say anything on the webinar here about what you can exactly expect to earn, because it's going to vary based on what type of role you're playing. And so I can share that as an employee, in general, you're going to make less when you break things down per hour than if you're an independent contractor. However, an independent contractor has to pay for more things like their gas and wear and tear on their vehicle, but an employee may not. And they're paid by the lump sum. So there are some benefits in being an employee, because you will have coverage for, as I already said, disability, workers' comp. You may have vision and dental covered. Very few staging companies pay any kind of medical benefits. I only know of like 2 in the country, and because it's not required. And so you want to make sure, you know, whatever role you're in, that you do have proper health care. And that's a whole nother topic. But we have providers that have independent plans for people. If you don't have a corporate plan you can tap into from a significant other or family member. But just, you know, you want to figure out what the earning is. So in general, you're not going to be making, nobody gets as much as the company owner, because the company owner is the rainmaker, and they're the ones that are out there in the trenches, and they put far more hours in than you ever will to make sure that there's business. So you'll be compensated based on your experience and contribution. And in the beginning then, so you might start at a lower level, and then it will increase based on your experience and contribution. So that's something, again, you can ask the person you're working with, the compensation plan, and is there, you know, room for advancement? How do you, you know, what time are they evaluate after 90 days? Is it 180 days? Is it 6 months, a year? You know, you want to know all that up front. Again, always establish payment terms up front so there's no surprises. And then the company owner always pays themselves the most, and sometimes the company owner goes in the hole when there's a lot of capital outlay. But the company owner is the one that deserves the most, because they're the ones that are out there getting the business, but they're also the ones paying out the most. So whether it's for purchasing of the furniture and accessories and so forth that go into these properties, or the marketing, or just other expenses that seem to be always there. The company owner has all the overhead. So what kind of overhead is there in staging? Well, initially, if people work out of their homes, there's not a lot of overhead. However, some of these established companies, a lot of us have warehouses. And whether or not we have one staging project, and you know, we have to pay for that space. So it's not only the square footage in the space, it's the electrical, the maintenance, the crew that runs it. They might have movers and trucks and insurance and stuff that related to those elements of the business. And so that is the overhead that the company owner has to cover, whether or not one project even takes place. And the company owner also has all the accountability to the client. So if something doesn't go as planned, they're not going to pick up the phone and call you, the client. They're going to call you. They're going to call the company owner. They're going to express their concerns, and you know, the company owner is the one that's got to fix it and deal with that. So that also emotionally takes you guys off the hook, because for the most part, our clients are really appreciative for what we can do for them. But every once in a while, you get these people with unrealistic expectations, the champagne taste in a beer budget, or just picking things apart, and it's not a design project, everything's brand new going in a house, and they just, you know, the company owner has to deal with all of that. So you don't have that responsibility. You get to go home at night and then just plan for the next time you want to stage. So the other thing I wanted to point out about employee versus independent contractor, as an employee, you'll have regular hours that you'll be expected to show up. So whether that's 8 hours a day or 4 hours a day, you're part-time, whatever that is, you'll show up at a certain time. You need to be productive, doing whatever is expected of you, and that is your employee. An independent contractor, you can set your own hours, so there's more flexibility. However, I will advise you to be available. You know, if somebody comes to me and says, gosh, I really would like to work for you as an independent contractor, I'd be like, great. We sit down, we start talking. At some point, I'm going to talk about what's your availability, you know, Monday through Friday, because that's typically when we're staging. They come back and they say, well, gosh, you know, I got like 2 hours on Monday, and I got an hour on Wednesday, and I don't work Fridays, and they start giving me all this really limited time. I'm not going to use them. It's just, I don't schedule my staging work around somebody else's schedule who's on the team. They need to schedule their life around what's happening with the company. And so that's what you need to be thinking of as well. Now, whether or not you may have little kids or other obligations where you can't be out all day long, that's fine. But whatever your availability is, it needs to be consistent, and understand that the more restrictive you are, the less you're going to get used by any staging company owner. So if your goal is to make money in staging, you need to make sure that your schedule is clear and that you're flexible. Oftentimes stagings will be scheduled, and then something happens. Oh gosh, the house isn't ready. We got one more thing we have to do. We got to push it to tomorrow. That happens all the time. So we're always flexible. Or gosh, the truck broke down, so the guys aren't going to be there for 3 hours. So now you're waiting around, or we all, you know, reconvene. Hey, we're going to be reconvened in 3.5 hours when the guys get there. That's when we're going to start. And so things are always in flux. It's never exact science. It's not predictable. We do our best, but there's a lot of things that are out of our control. So if you're a temperament that has a hard time with change or things that don't go as planned, and you want to be in this industry, you're going to have to learn how to get over that, because there's so many things that can happen, and we just roll with it. I don't get a lot stressed out that much. I mean, sometimes it can be pretty tense. We always manage to figure it out, and the client is never aware of what I might be dealing with emotionally, trying to handle all this stuff. And the team, sometimes they're aware and sometimes they're not. But regardless, the stagings get done, but there can always be things that happen that we're not anticipating. You get to stage, be creative, but not have the same level of involvement in the success of the company. And that's why the company owner always pays themselves the most if they're smart. All right. As far as dollars around the country, again, I'm not going to give a specific amount. You can do some research to find out kind of what the going rate hourly is for a professional stager who's the company owner. And it's not like you go, okay, well, they're making X amount, so I'll do 50% of that. What they're going to tell you is this is how much you're going to get paid as an employee, the X amount per hour. And it's like, that's what it is based on their business. As an independent contractor, how I price for our people on our team is based on the project. So if it's a little house and we're going to kick it out fast, they're going to make less than something that's a larger home. You know, maybe the first house has three rooms we're doing, living, dining, master. We're doing kitchen counters and bathrooms. And then we've got a big old house that has living, dining, family, kitchen nook, master bedroom, and an office, plus the kitchen counters and bathrooms. Well, that's like double the amount of time. So I know that, so they're going to earn more to do those, or I may have more hands on deck to make the project go faster. So always when you're an independent contractor, ask how much you're going to get paid. They can give you a range. And then after the project, they'll either tell you this is how much you're going to earn, or beforehand, they'll say this is how much you'll be paid today. So don't ever leave it open-ended to the point where you're wondering how much you're going to earn. All right. Teamwork makes the dream work. I love that quote. And it's true. So being part of a team, T-E-A-M, stands for, together, sorry, my mouse is jumpy. Together, everyone achieves more or accomplishes more. And you've probably heard this, there's no I in team. So it's not about you by yourself, but everybody together. So together, everyone achieves more, T-E-A-M. Teamwork makes us all more productive. Makes us all more productive. So when you have somebody else there encouraging you, maybe even pushing you a little bit, you know, I find it's more fun to stage with colleagues versus just by myself. So it makes us all more productive in our roles. Understand your role and expectations up front. So always ask the people that you're working with, hopefully they have position descriptions for their company. And so then you can just review the position description. You'll know exactly what's expected of you. You never want to leave that open-ended where you get to a staging and you don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And so then you're not doing it right, or you're doing enough, not enough, too much, whatever. And because the owner never told you what's expected of you, or the team lead. So always ask up front, what do you need me to be doing today, or what's expected of me, so that you don't set yourself up for failure. And again, up front. It's really great when it's in writing too. Set yourself up for success versus feeling like you missed the mark, or they're being critical or judgy or whatever. It's because you need to know what this is up front. Everybody needs to be on the same page. Ask for clear direction. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Maybe there's something to explain you don't quite understand. Say, would you mind sharing that with me again? I just want to make sure I truly understand what we need to be doing here. Now again, staging's not rocket science, so it's not super complicated. But depending on who you work with, you may have 3 different companies you decide to work with as an independent contractor, and they each have their own processes and things they like to have done in a house. And so you need to ask for direction, and then remember what you need to be doing per project, per company even. And so you may want to take notes, write things down, but you know, get that clear direction so you're not just guessing, and don't fake it. I have no challenge with somebody saying, hey, would you mind explaining this a little bit more? One of my colleagues has a history of seizures. She's on the team, and so I know that her memory, her ability to remember things is hampered by that. And so it's okay that I have to take extra time sometimes to explain things to her, because I understand it's a limitation. And she's not stupid at all. It's just that's part of her brain got damaged. And so if that's something that you deal with, you know, make sure that the company owners know that, so that they understand they may need to explain a little bit more, or you just want to make sure you have it really clear in your head. And then don't be a person that has to be repeated 20 times. Like if it's something simple, for example, always take the trash away from the staging. I don't expect to have to tell people that 15 times, or, you know, to clean up after yourselves, or to sweep up. If we bring a mess in, we're going to take that out with us. Or remembering to bring light bulbs or things like that. I shouldn't have to tell people 15 times to do that, because that's always a standard. So once they understand the process and the protocol, then from that point forward, as the company owner, I would expect that they would understand that that needs to be done every single time. When you've gained experience, you'll be entrusted with more involvement, which is exciting. So that's how you can move into different roles within the company. So again, you want to ask what your role is, what other areas you may be able to move into over time, and at what point that might happen for you. Okay, this mouse is very sensitive. Okay, being part of a team, you need to understand basic tools. Now, this is some of the information that's actually in your business manual, but you need to have a little toolkit. So whether you go purchase one and have these basic tools, a hammer, you know, screwdriver, Phillips versus flathead, or slotted is what they call it, flathead, pliers. I never use vice grips, but an adjustable wrench, because you never know what you're going to need. And then these are great. These are Allen wrenches. And so we oftentimes have to assemble furniture or tighten the furniture when it comes in. And so you want to have some knowledge on what to do. And of course, a tape measure for measuring, hanging artwork, or whatever you're doing. And so you'll have a little kit put together. You might have some, you know, special hooks and nails that are used to hang artwork. And as the company owner, I usually supply these to my teammates, or if they go purchase on their own, I'll reimburse them. For independent contractors or employees, you should definitely have a kit provided by the company. So if the kit is something that's you know, my team members, they don't work for any other staging companies. They just have other jobs that they do to earn money. Now, if you're somebody that you're working for 3 different staging companies, probably not going to buy that kit just for you. So that might be something you would purchase and just have to write off as an expense, because you're not just working for me or maybe the other 3 people. You take a third, whatever that is, be fair to whoever's using you. But however, these are just basic tools you need to know how to utilize and have them on you. Allen wrench, a screwdriver for furniture assembly or tightening, as I just said. And then being part of a team, you also need to know how to hang a piece of art. So I took the back sides of some pictures here. This is a piece of art that has a wire, and so it's going to hang from the wire. And depending on how heavy it is or light it is, you need to make sure that the hooks or the nails that you're using are going to support that piece of art. And always ask the owner, when you're out in properties, you need to know, is this drywall? Is it plaster? Is it cement? What kind of a wall is this? Because at least some of the older homes here in Denver, they could have plaster. Now, plaster crumbles if you put a nail in it. So you have to have special types of hooks that are going to go in there. If it's a cinder block wall behind, you're not going to be able to hang that piece of art. It's just going to bend the nail. So then maybe you lean a piece of art or you do something else. So that's knowledge that you need to gain from experience and also asking questions. So when the picture is wired, you're going to use a nail or a hook. Again, get some knowledge on that. I have the team order, or we purchase at Home Depot and Lowe's or Ace Hardware, the hooks that have they're gold hooks, and they hang the wire, and then the little nail is not really a nail. It's like it's a nail, but it has a threaded head. And so you nail it in, but when you go to take it out, you just unscrew it. So you're not ripping it out from the wall with the big claw part of the hammer and damaging the wall. Now, this is wrapped canvas art. So wrapped canvas art, depending on if it's horizontal or vertical, I'll use this as an example. Let's say you're hanging it this way, the vertical, you'd only need 1 nail. I don't know what this thing is, but you'd need 1 nail. You could, let's say this is the top, you'd hang it because you can center it, you hang it, you don't need to have 2 nails. If you turn your head sideways and this is the top of the piece of art and we're backwards, there's a stick running through the middle, right? Just like here. And so if I was going to hang with nails, I can't just do 1 nail here because the artwork is going to drop on the side here. If I just put 1 nail here, it'll drop on this side. It's not going to be even. So you have to have a nail on either side of the stick in order for this thing to hang level. Okay, so this takes 2 nails. This would take 1 nail. This would also take 1 nail if you hung it vertically. Now, if the canvas doesn't have a rod in the middle, it just has these 4 support pieces, again, you could just do 1 nail because you don't have to go in between the sticks. So that requires, one of the things we probably should put in here as a tools is a leveler. Those are inexpensive to get, a level. And some of the tools like this, some of them have a level built in. So there's all sorts of things that have like combo tool. But whatever it is, that is a really helpful thing to have when you're hanging art to make sure that it is level on the wall. Because when you're right up on it, you'll swear that it's hung straight, and you step back and it's totally dipping on the right or left. So you can't tell when you're right up on it, but a level will tell you if you're straight or not. These pictures I hate hanging with these little claw teeth or these hooks. But you can't wire this because of how it's on there or the weight, and they have these teeth. So the reason I hate them is because it does require 2 hooks or nails, but furthermore, they're spread apart. Inevitably, you think, okay, I'm gonna get this one on, and then I'll hang this one, and I'll just put the nail in the wall, and I'll make sure this one is exactly the same height. When you're staring at that wall without a measuring tape or something that keeps it level, that nail is going to be up or down. You're going to hang that piece of art, and it's going to be askew. So then I sometimes will take these pictures with little teeth, and I'll flip around, and I'll make the teeth kind of go. I'll rub it on the wall, like up and down, to try to make like a gray metal mark, thinking, okay, that's where my nails go. Still not accurate enough. So there's actually tools. There's one called, that just went out of my head. Anyway, they're coming to our conference, and it's a tool that it's like a big ruler type thing, and it has a slide gauge on it. And so you put it on the back of the picture, and you can slide these little gauges where the teeth are. So there's usually 2 of them, and then it has a level built in. Then you lift that up on the wall where you want to hang the picture, and there should be a place that you can either push in with these things that make little holes in the walls where the nail's going to go, or you could mark it with like a pencil, and then you just hang it, and it's perfect. So they have these things. I purchased one at Home Depot and Lowe's, and then there's a company that has another device. So those are great because I'm not a measurer. See this lady over here, she's measuring across the mirror. It's 24 inches, and then you'd have to make sure that you did a mark, and then you would make sure measuring the floor up. You could do marks that way to make sure that it's level or even. And so these are my least favorite types of things to hang, but you will encounter them, so learn how to hang them properly so you don't have 18 holes in the wall, because that looks really unsightly and the client will be really mad. Okay, wiring a picture. You might get asked to wire a picture. Let's say it's a brand new piece of art they purchased. It says it hasn't been wired, and so oftentimes it has these little hooks here, right? And then here's a finished wiring. So you can see this type of wire. You want to make sure it's picture wire. If you're being asked to buy supplies, don't go get this little wimpy wire that's really elasticy, because it's going to end up looking like this when you hang it. So there's picture hanging wire, and there's different gauges. So the heavier the picture or a piece of art or mirror, the stronger the gauge wire needs to be. So I would buy something like a medium gauge that's universal, and oftentimes I'll measure across and see how this person just kind of wrapped it back here and here. I'll sometimes go with the wire, I'll go double up and then wrap it back up on itself, and that's going to hold. And you can see that they lifted it up. There's a distance between the top of the frame and where the wire is going to be, and it's not sticking out over the top. So you want to make sure that the wire does not ever show out over the top unless that's intentional, because there are some artwork now that does hang from cables and so forth. You want to make sure that the wire is enough up on top of the frame that it's going to hang right, because let's say that this wire didn't bend up or go up any higher and you hang it, this thing's going to fall forward. So if the wire is too high up here, that's not good. If it's too much in the middle, that's also not good, because the picture's not going to be flat on the wall. It's going to fall forward. It's going to look weird. So anyhow, wire, learn how to do this. The company owner can show you how to do that. Make sure that after you wire it, you pick it up without holding the frame. And if it's this kind of wire and it's going to stretch, you'll know it's the weight of the picture is too much for the wire, and it's going to pull it up and it's going to look like this. You'll have to take the wire off and either double, triple, quadruple it if it's wimpy wire, or go get better gauge to do that particular wiring. Okay. You also need to know placement of furniture. So in your manual, there are placement of furniture guidelines, little diagrams and so forth that I put together. And so I thought I'd throw some pictures in here just to kind of talk about it. So here is a family room. There's, for staging purposes, this is what I would call an L setup. It's a sectional, which you have a piece here, like a sofa love seat, that could be an L, with a couple of accent chairs here. And here they have the sofa love seat, not a sectional, and again, the two accent chairs. So taking these out, you'd open up the pathway for staging. And I'm not standing back here to know the room, but you definitely want to have at least a primary piece in every room, and then you can have secondary. So in both of these situations, this secondary piece could disappear, and you could have just the two chairs. This one is a sectional, but just imagine this is a love seat. You could take this piece out, and again, you have these nice chairs, or you take the chairs out and lighten up the load. So placement is important, because we're selling flow and pathways, and so you don't want to have the room cut off that people can't get through. So in this picture, there's a pathway that goes around here to the door that goes out, which is important. And so always consider how somebody's going to access through the room. Make sure that we're not cutting that off by how we place the furniture. And these almost look like chairs. I don't know what this thing is here. I can't really tell in the picture. I'd remove those for staging. I'm just observing this for the first time, so I just found this picture, but they kind of distract me from looking out the window. So for staging, goodbye, goodbye. And then maybe you keep the arrangement. The homeowner is like an owner occupied, or maybe this is furniture that's being brought into the space. We have a nice big area rug. And then you arrange the furniture, and there's not just one right way to do it, but there's usually a better way. So always consider pathways through rooms. So in this picture here, it's a kitchen. And so I would want to make sure there's a pathway behind these chairs to get into the other part of the room. So I don't want to have to walk through here and bump my shin against the chair of the table. So let's say that this is really tight here. These have got to go for selling, because we're selling pathway and flow. And let's say that there's an access out here. We would want to make sure that people could get behind this couch out the door. So you never want to have positioning of furniture where it's blocking access to an outside door or another part of the house where there might be a doorway. You want to make sure that there's pathways that are open, not super cramped, and easy for buyers to get to. Here's some other examples. This is a before and after. So we talk about focal points, for example. So this is the focal point is right here. It's built-in in the fireplace. However, this is a sectional, and depending on what kind of projects you'll be doing, sectionals can be broken apart. So what they did is they kept the couch piece, and they took this piece and it disappeared, and then this is the chaise. So the chaise remains, and this opens, and that opens up the whole view into the fireplace, which was a good decision because they could have also done the couch here, gotten rid of this piece, and just had the little love seat, this piece over here too. That would have worked. But this creates a wall visually. So here is an example of, they are focused on the fireplace, and you have the accent chairs here, but this is a wall behind it, so it's a natural position for this couch. And having the chairs on the window side is keeping this all open. So the buyer's going to walk in the house and they get to see this room, and it's not blocked off for them at all. Oops. Get out of there. Sorry, somebody's trying to call me. No. Okay. So, and then the little cubes, those are great too. They could go if they were kind of in the way by the fireplace. This is another example of floating a piece of furniture looking at the focal point, and then you have the accent chairs on the right and left. So this chair could have come here and here at an angle. Having them on that side is fine. In this picture, this random chair needs to go for selling, and they could have had the two brown chairs over there and kept this open. So as you start working on stagings, you're going to get more experience, and studying the pictures will help you so that when you're in the moment, you can help make decisions of placement. And usually, whoever's running the project will have already made some of those decisions, but things can happen in the moment. There's not only one right way to stage a room. As I just said before, there's usually a better way based on placement, but be open to moving things around and trying different things, especially when it's a challenging floor plan. And the ones that, to me, that are most challenging for a lot of reasons, big open floor plans and floating the furniture and creating groupings for people that make sense, or rooms that are long and skinny or don't have a natural focal point. Those can be challenging. Okay, so a vacant property, oops, someone on the team will have done a preview and submitted a proposal for the staging to the client. So someone will have gone and looked at the house, gotten pictures, and got the pricing together, usually the company owner. Now for me, I do have my team members do previews because I just can't be everywhere. And sometimes we'll have 3 or 4 in a day, and they get paid for these because it's their time as an independent contractor. So the preview's done, pictures, proposal submitted, client says that's great. The proposal includes the plan for what's going to occur. So in a vacant home staging, we identify the rooms we're going to stage, and then we don't tell the client everything we're bringing in and how we're going to place things, because they're paying us to do that, so they don't need to know, because it's not subject to their approval. It's based on what we know is going to work for the buyer. However, the company owner or the team lead, the stager, does need to know what's going in, how's it going to be placed. They have to know what the plan is, and whether they write it down or it's in their head, that plan just needs to be executed at the property. So you need to help execute the plan that's in place. And staging, you identify the rooms using company or third-party inventory. So furniture that's brought in, accessories and artwork, could be owned by the company, could be rented third-party, or a combination. So whatever that is, you might be loading up items, decorative items and so forth for the layers that are going to go on, and the big pieces are going to come from a third-party resource, or maybe you guys are loading everything. And so depending on the company, they may have movers, or you may be the one helping lift things. So most companies are going to have a rule that people that work with them can lift 50 pounds. So if that's something that you can't do, you've got to make sure that they know that up front. Doesn't mean you're not going to get hired. You know, a lot of us have moved into using labor because none of us are getting any younger. And I have moved every type of furniture you can think of: beds, mattresses, tables, big fat couches, heavy stuff. And I'm not doing it by myself. There's usually somebody on the other end, or even 4 of us trying to hoist a piece of furniture. I've never done a treadmill by myself. When clients have those in their houses, they need to get them out, or I can coordinate professional movers coming in. So, but you may have to lift, you know, an accent chair or a dining chair or something like that, bins with decor, artwork you'll have to carry in, so things like that that you are helping. So when we're on site, time is money. So we want to get through the project and get it done as quickly as possible and not linger longer than we need to. The team leader is responsible to the client and has the final say. So that means when you're on site, you're doing a project, maybe you have an idea to place a furniture, a chair a certain way, and the team leader comes in and rearranges it. Or maybe you have accessories on a surface and you did 3 things there, and they come and they take all of those away and they put an orchid, one large item on the table. And so in your mind, you're thinking like, you know, I thought what I did was pretty nice, and I don't know why they have to feel they have to come in and take apart what I did, because I think I did a good job. And so you're thinking about yourself, and I always say get ego out of the way. It has nothing to do with whether what you did looked nice or not, because it probably looked great. It's probably all about that inventory. And because we only, I don't want to have to go back to the warehouse and get more stuff or have to go shopping. I got to make sure the inventory is stretched in these properties. And so usually on a surface, we're going to do 1s and 3s groupings. So you could have one large thing. So maybe that team leader decided this one larger thing was great on the coffee table, and those 3 little things or other items were better used. Maybe they needed one of them in the bedroom, one in the bathroom, or one to complete another grouping of some sort. So they get the final say. And then as you work with the company, you start moving into different roles. Maybe eventually you'll be here, and then you get the final say. And that way nobody's feelings get hurt. And it's not about whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. It's just the available inventory that's on, in the property maybe needed elsewhere, or maybe the team leader had a different vision for how that tablescape was supposed to be done. And so you just got to roll with it and not get upset. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't have good ideas. You can certainly suggest things. We like people who collaborate, but ultimately somebody's got to make a decision so we can move on. Always think about the buyer perspective when staging. And what that relates to is if I have a coffee table book and I have it on the coffee table, and so buyers walk into the room, I want to make sure that that book is turned around so they get to see the cover and they're reading it from top to bottom versus upside down, or it's displayed on an easel that they can see what that book is. Versus if I'm living in my house, that book probably be turned around because I'll be sitting on my couch reading through the picture book, and so it might be facing the couch as I'm sitting on it versus into the room as somebody's walking in the room. So always consider the vantage point of the buyer. Cookbooks on a counter in the kitchen, again, how's that buyer going to walk in that room? So make sure things are positioned accordingly. And same thing if you do like a tray on a bed, couple coffee mugs, maybe a book that's open or a magazine. Make sure that I get to see what the cover is or the pages are facing me, the buyer, when I walk into that bedroom. So they would be facing, I'm at the foot of the bed. I want to be able to see what that magazine is versus I'm laying in bed reading. It would be upside down to the buyer. So always think of the buyer's perspective of how you position things. And remember the principles of staging you learned in class: high, medium, and low. So the varying of the heights of accessories and even the furniture makes things more interesting than 1s and 3s, most often used. And this just creates balance. That's not to say that you couldn't have 3 equal height things on a dining table, or 2 equal height things on a mantle framing a picture. So you could have 2 vases, 2 candlesticks or something. They could be the same height. So usually though, when you're clustering 3 things together, and I'll go back to, I didn't think about this until just now, like here, there's a lot of stuff on this table. So you see how they have the book facing into the room, so good. This doesn't need to be there, but they got a high, and they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things on here. Actually, that's just a box. So anyhow, let's just use this little grouping here: high, medium, low, little trio. So there's just something about balance, having the 3 things versus if I took this thing away and only had these 2 things left, it just doesn't feel like there's something missing. And so I can explain why the principle of 3s work. You probably could research it, because one student explained it to me one time after I taught a class. But it just feels right. So high, medium, and low. Now, when you're staging, one of the things we also talk about is odd numbers, less is more, and then we are not decorating. So my saying that I teach my team is, just because you bring it doesn't mean you have to use it. So we always bring extras, a few extras as far as decor. It's the worst when you run out of stuff and you're like, I didn't bring enough, because then you either have to motor back to the warehouse or go shopping. And that's not you guys necessarily doing that. It's usually the owner, or somebody's going to have to pay for it. So if we don't have enough, my team, like if they forget the bed skirt isn't in the bag, they have to go shopping for it. I have to pay for that bed skirt, but also may have to compensate them for some extra time that we weren't anticipating. And I don't like that, because I didn't build that into the staging property proposal. When we propose a price to the client, it's a lump sum based on what we know is going to happen, the rooms we're doing, the items that are going in, the team involved, any kind of expenses and so forth. We calculate all that in, we send it out to the client, they agree to it. Now I can't go back to them and say, gosh, you know what? We didn't bring enough stuff. We had to go back to the warehouse or go shopping. And so that took extra time. And so I had to pay out an extra $200 for the stuff, plus another $100 to the team members that were involved. So you owe me $300. It just doesn't happen that way. I eat it. So that's why we want to plan, know exactly what we're bringing. make sure that we have what we need, and that's why we always bring a few extras, my theory, but just because you have it doesn't mean you have to use it. So we don't want to overload like that coffee table. There's too many things on that coffee table. So I could take 3 or 4 of those items away and use them in another house, save them, or use them somewhere else in the property. And so when you're staging, you have to ask your company person that you're working with what their style is for staging. So usually there's minimalist. So that person's not going to have a lot of excess things on counters. It's going to be pretty more sparse looking. Minimalist, medium, and full. So I usually am like medium. You know, we like to have accessories on all the counters and surfaces and so forth, but not to excess. A luxury staging, you will have more because it's a higher priced property, a bigger priced property, and the expectation is more, but always edit it so that you're not doing it to the point of distraction. So many accessories on a surface or the kitchen counters, to the point where you're noticing all that instead of the counters themselves. And now that I just said that too, there are some times when you are trying to hide an ugly counter that hasn't been updated. So you will put maybe a few more things on there just to add a little color and kind of hide the ugly. But there's a point where you have to say, this is too much, or this is perfect. And so the company owner is going to teach you that as far as what they like to see, and you just need to kind of adhere to that. I remember years ago, we were, staging, and I would usually say, as far as accent pillows on couches and so forth, I was like 3 or 4 on the big couch and like 2 on the love seat. So I'm like 5 or 6 pillows is all you need. I remember one time the team, there was something like 12 pillows being used. And I had a cow because I'm like, that's a whole other house worth of pillows. Because I looked at the pictures and I wanted to run over here and take 6 of those pillows away. And I didn't. I left it alone. And then as the years have gone on, we might do like 5 pillows on the big couch and, 3 or 4 on the little one. So I've gotten more generous with the inventory. However, you guys need to know as an assistant that every piece of inventory, every item, every pillow, every tchotchke that comes into the house, that costs money. And so when so much stuff gets poured into a house and maybe it looks fabulous, that means that there's less available for the next property. And so it's a constant balance of purchasing or using what we have and making it work. And so when I'm in a mode of we got to make it work because I don't have the budget to go buy more stuff, an example would be you have an end table with a lamp on it. That's one item, and it's a tall, it's a high. And then you just need 2 more things. The medium, you could do a plant and like a little decorative ball or a little bird or something like that. Those are 3 things. You don't need a 4th thing to create the high, medium, low with a little grouping, and that lamp is all by itself. So let's say that you're doing a family room, a living room, and a master bedroom. There are 6 end tables that need to be done, 6 lamps, and then there would be 18 decorative items if you consider these all by themselves. And if you're able to take one of them away because you consider the lamp the high, you've now just saved 6 items of decor that could go someplace else. And that could be 2 groupings of 3 that go on a kitchen counter or in a bathroom counter or on a dresser or used some other way. Maybe they go into a bookshelf or something. So think about that when you're staging to make the inventory, the items go a little farther when that's needed. All right, let's talk about occupied staging. Someone on the team will have done a consultation usually, which is when we tell the sellers what they need to do in their house, and then submitted a proposal for a hands-on portion. So this is an owner-occupied hands-on staging. Sometimes it's they can't get the recommendations done that were provided. They're like, hey, can you just come in and you and your team and you knock this thing out? And so you could be just using what the homeowner has, and it could involve rearranging, removing things, packing things, or it could also mean the inclusion of some additional accessories, decor, and or furniture that gets brought in to fill the gaps. So the proposal is going to include the plan for what's going to occur, and you need to help execute the plan. So whoever is the lead on the project should communicate clearly to the team what's expected, what rooms we're doing, what the plan is. I actually have all the pictures of any previews uploaded onto a Google Drive so any team member can access it and see the property, because it sure makes a difference when you can visually see what's going on in the property. And so depending on what's needed, you'll do a hands-on staging using the homeowner's things. You could include supplemental items. You may end up packing items. Now, when that happens, the team leader would have proposed that in the pricing, and the client, they may have packing paper and bubble wrap and boxes. I'm going to ask them if they have those, ample supply. If not, someone's going to go pick those up. It'll either be me or one of the team members. They're going to go purchase the boxes, bubble wrap, paper, et cetera, and that client pays for all that. So that's not something I provide as a service for free. That's either going to be built into my pricing, or I'm going to give them the receipt and they're going to write me a check for the difference. But we may have to provide that, and then you may end up packing, depending on the project, you may end up packing people's stuff. So this is where we go back to honoring the client and their possessions. So, you know, they do sign a thing that we're not professional packers, but they're going to be paying our normal rates for having us pack their stuff up if they are not able to do that. And so we have had to do this. It's not real common. I'll share with you, most of the time the seller gets rid of a lot of the stuff, and we're just, you know, they do their part, we come in and do our part, and the house is staged. But this can happen, so when you are involved in packing, please always be super careful and mindful of fragile items, and, you know, pack things carefully, and we label the boxes with the, you know, Sharpies and what's inside and so forth, so that the seller isn't guessing. It could involve moving items around room by room or out of the house. And depending on what those items are, it might be something easy that, you know, two of us can lift and get out there, or we may have to hire movers. It can be challenging due to the limitations with the seller still living in the house. So the difference between a vacant and an occupied, of course, is there's nobody living in a vacant property. So you can set the scene and do some kind of fun things with, you know, pillow treatments or whatever, even the master bed, and it looks beautiful. When somebody's living in a house, they'll be sleeping in that bed, they'll be sitting on that furniture, they'll be eating in that kitchen. And so we can't do necessarily all the things that we know would like to do because it's inconvenient to the seller. There's certain things we're going to ask them to be willing to live without while their house is on the market. But there's certain things that, you know, their television, that's probably going to stay. We may move it, but it may not go completely away. They may work from home. So they may have to have their computers and some of their paperwork and so forth. So we teach them how to secure those items. However, when I'm doing a hands-on, I don't just grab everything I don't like off a surface, shove it in a box and put it in the garage, because that might be stuff that they need on a daily basis. So we need to be sensitive to that. The other thing I'll share about occupied home staging is, depending on the house, and this is saying that clean is a relative term. Clean is a relative term. So somebody might think their house is clean, and it really is. It's spick and span. There isn't any, you know, dust or anything like that, and it really is clean to what I would consider my standard. And then there's other people that think their house is clean, and it's not. It's dust is layers everywhere, or it's just not deep clean, and it kind of, you know, depending on how you feel about that, you might be kind of grossed out. However, we're here to provide a service. Now, we're not cleaning their house, but I'll tell you, start moving furniture around, you might find, you know, dust bunnies under furniture, toys, old food, Cheetos on the carpet. And I don't go embarrassed to say, like, excuse me, there's a pile of stuff here that you must have eaten here 3 months ago. I mean, I'm going to broom in a dustpan. I might pick that up if they're in the house. Usually they're not even home when we're staging. I don't like to have an audience. So we might find some of those things. And then in beds, the bedrooms, if we're dressing the bed, we're going to use their bedspread and so forth, unless it's gross, and then we might shop and get one for them, but still we have to dress the bed. And I've, you know, had homes where it's just, they've got the CPAP machines with the oxygen thing, and they've got, you know, weird books or whatever, Kleenex, and just their personal care stuff. And so we just tactfully put that stuff away, and, you know, we'll dress the bed. And gloves, I have a pair of gloves that are called glovables, and they're kind of fun. They go up your arm, and they're kind of in fun patterns, but it's nice to have those, because if there's something really disgusting, I'm not touching it with my hands, but I'm not going to embarrass the seller. And that'll be the exception versus the rule for you guys in occupied houses, but you just want to be prepared, because, you know, it's very different when you're doing a vacant house where the furniture isn't used. It goes from house to house. The bedding goes back in bags. It's never slept in. You know, you guys catch my drift. And so just be prepared for that. That is something that we do encounter with staging. It is not glamorous, and it is rewarding, because you do get to see the instant transformation, but it's hard work, and it certainly isn't glamorous. And we'll talk about how to dress for the job, for the staging, coming up. Want to be mindful of the seller's things, whether we're packing them or putting them in drawers or in a secure area where maybe they're going to go through and pack things up. Just be careful with their things. You know, accidents happen, and that's why we have insurance. And we just want to be mindful. We might think it's the ugliest thing. I've seen collections of trolls. They were awful. They were ugly. They weren't like cute trolls, like with the crazy hair. These were like trolls that looked like they were made out of a wood stump, and they were ugly. So I would never purchase that. But I don't know why this person had it in their house. But I didn't go, oh my God, these are so ugly. Why do you have these? I just took it down and, you know, put it in a bin or a box, and we took it out of the room because they didn't need to have it in there. And then you're going to honor the client in their possessions. So it goes back to the foundation of what we learned in the beginning. All right. Basic furniture arrangement. Understand the best way to place furniture by identifying focal point, the purpose of the room, pathways, and fit. So maybe you learned some of this in class. We talk about having the focal point. In a living room, it could be a fireplace. You could have more than one focal point. It could be a view window. In a family room, it could be a fireplace. It could be built-ins. It could be the entertainment center. And again, maybe a view window. So you may have a couple of them. And sometimes there's rooms that don't have a focal point. You have to create that. So that focal point is usually where the biggest grouping of furniture is going to be congregated around that focal point, again, considering pathways. And then what's the purpose of the room? So when there's clients that have an office in the dining room, we want to turn it back into the dining room. If it's, a bedroom, the bed from the doorway is the focal point. So there's certain things that we learn as far as process and purpose. And staging, as I said, is not complicated. And there are some guidelines, like we're just sharing, that work, and then a lot of it is subjective. So there's not just one right way to do it, but these are the things we consider when we're arranging the furniture. And then pathways I already talked about, so making sure you're not blocking off access to a part of the room. And then fit. What I mean by that is we want to make sure that we're not cramming a big piece of furniture in a little room to where it feels like it's swallowed up, and vice versa. You don't want to have like a little tiny scale sofa or love seat in a room that's massive. So we want to make sure that the scale and the fit is appropriate for the room. And this is where the person working with the client initially that identifies what's needed, the team leader, or whoever's working with the client, they're the ones that are going to say, okay, your furniture in here is too big, we've got to break it up or move it around, or we need to bring something else in here that's not so heavy and dark. So they'll already have determined all of that, and then you as the assistant are helping execute the plan. And then you want to play around with the arrangements, because sometimes we think it's going to work one way and it doesn't quite happen, and so we'll try something else. So that's totally fine to do on the spot, as long as somebody can finally make a decision of what's going to be best for the buyers. All right, on-site protocol, dress for work. So you are going to be staging. It is physical, depending on the time of year. You can be sweating, depending on how you are. If I'm a person that gets very hot, and so I do sweat. So I'm not going to be, in the summertime, I do have a quote uniform that I put on. I've got a skirt, which is a black shorts with a skirt layer over it, and has pockets, and it goes to my knees, above my knee. And then I might wear a tank top if it's super hot. Other times I might wear leggings with a shirt. So I'm covered up and I'm working. There shouldn't be people from the house there watching you. But you never know who's going to show up. We've had realtors show up, we've had workers show up, we've had the homeowners show up, we've had neighbors show up. So you just never know. And so whoever is working on site needs to be dressed. You don't have to be dressed professionally, no high heels, nothing glamorous like that, but you can't be wearing anything that's shredded or torn, or like booty shorts, anything that's, going to be too revealing. That's just not appropriate. So hopefully you're already aware of that, but you're dressing and you're representing the company that you're working with when you show up. Stay off the phone. That's a big one for me. So when you're on-site staging, stay off your cell phones, unless you're talking to the company owner or you're dealing with something related to that project. You don't need to be on your phone. Now, of course, if there's an emergency that happens with your family and you need to take the call, that's understandable, but not on the phone all the time while you're expected to be working. So one of the things I do provide for my team members is aprons with pockets, so they can put their cell phones in their pockets, so they have it on them. They can have a bottle of water, maybe some nails and a hammer. They can be walking around with that. So, but I don't want people on the phone when they're on my time and on my dime. And especially if you're being paid hourly as an employee, you better not be on that phone, because you are being waged by the hour, versus the independent contractor is by the project. However, if you're yakking on the phone, you're just taking a lot longer than you need to get the project done. And when there's another team member with you and they're being productive and you're on the phone, that causes resentment. So be mindful of that. Be on time. So wherever you're told to be for the staging and so forth, show up on time. Especially when you're an employee, show up on time to work, be productive, honor the company that you work with. When you're an independent contractor, you'll probably be given a window of time, like this is when we need to have it accomplished. And so once you hit that house, be productive and have a goal in mind. Like, I want to be in and out of here in an hour. I want to be in and out of here in 2 hours, whatever that time frame is the team needs to agree to that and then work towards that goal. Be cheerful. So when you show up, be happy, be somebody wants to be around. So, if you're having a bad day, that's fine, but just don't let your grumpy mood rub off, because, it is physical and it is fun to stage. We have fun. We play music and so forth sometimes, but you want to have a good experience. So be cheerful. Don't be the Debbie Downer. And then food breaks. Well, that depends. So if you're an employee and you're working 8 hours, you would be expected to be able to take a lunch. I don't know if they'll give you half an hour, an hour. And independent contractor, a lot of times our stagings, we're starting after breakfast, so we're not starting at 8 a.m. So you have your breakfast, you show up, you're not going to take lunch right at noon. You're not on the clock like an employee. So usually a house to set up takes us a couple hours, and then you can go get a bite afterwards. You just go home and eat at home. So don't be expecting this big lunch being provided when you're staging as an independent contractor. If you have low blood sugar, or you're diabetic and need little snack stuff, you can bring food bars or what have you, but you're not going to be given a set amount of time to go have a lunch break with your little food box and your water. It'll be, let's just keep going and get this done. Now, the exception to that would be a big old house that we're staging and it's going to take 5 or 6 hours. We can stop and have a little break, but again, it's not going to be a half an hour or an hour long for lunch. It might be we go get a quick bite, or we have something brought in. Water is super important to stay hydrated, so have bottled water or one of those, containers you can take with you, but always have your water. Stay hydrated, especially in the heat, super important. And then pay attention to detail. So after the room is staged that you're working on, go back into the entry of the room and look at the room and say, where does my eye go? Are there any pillow tags showing from the pillows? Do I need to tuck those under? Are there anything that it's askew? Is the artwork straight? Can I see cords from the lamps dangling out? If I'm in a bedroom, does the bed look wrinkly? Are the pillows right? Is the bed skirt even? Because I'll tell you, I'll stand in a room. This has happened to me several times, and I won't see any of these issues because I'm not really focused on it, but I'll take a picture with my cell phone, and then I'll look at it, and I'm like, okay, that bed skirt's crooked, or gosh, that pillow is falling over. I didn't even see that before I took the picture. So your camera of your phone can help you with the detail part of it, because once we leave, it's so irritating with, like, the photographer goes and then they take pictures and we're like, oh my God, I didn't even notice that the leg of the bed was showing, or that window wasn't even, the window shades weren't even. They either got to be the same level, open, whatever it is, make sure that's done, or the lampshade was askew, or the seam of the lampshade was showing. So these are all things you'll learn to pay attention to details, but not to the point of being frozen, you can't make a decision. So don't do analysis paralysis, but you do want to pay attention to details, because the details matter with staging. Making sure things are clean, no fingerprints, all that kind of thing. If you're asked to wipe down a table with Windex, know that every single one of us has done that. We've all taken tags off. We've all had to clean up, take garbage out, whatever it takes. We have all done that. So it doesn't make you a person who's less than or a peon. Never think of yourself that way. You're a valuable part of the team and a valued person on the team. And everybody plays an important role, whether that person is keeping the fingerprints off, taking tags off, smoothing things out, or the one hanging the artwork, or the one, accessorizing the tablescapes and the counters. Whatever that's done, everybody plays an important role. Remember, you represent the company when you're working for that company. So when you're an employee, of course, you represent the company. People calling in on the phone, or anybody you engage with, clients and so forth, you represent that company. So be professional, be cheerful, find out what the policies are and what's expected of you in that role. Independent contractor, you're not really going to see a lot of the clients and so forth necessarily unless you start moving up and you do consultations or you are asked to do more. But just know that when you're on site with the project, neighbors are watching. And again, people can show up, so you represent that company with what you're wearing, how you act, the words you use, and so forth. So just be mindful of that. And you represent the accreditation as an ASA. So you represent accredited staging assistants everywhere. You represent staged homes. You represent the companies you work for, whether they're ASP stagers or not. And so you should be very proud that you've taken the time and invested in your education, or that somebody wanted to put you through the course because they value you so much they wanted to make sure that you have the knowledge and the credentials that matter, so that you know what to do and you can be a valued part of their team. So this is the last slide. I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. If you have any questions for me or just in general as you kind of go along, feel free to email me. Phone calling is not good because I have so many calls coming in, I'm on it, but email is good. And so my first name is spelled Jennie. So I'm a Jennifer, but I'm a Jenny, Jennie at stagedhomes.com. Okay, so you could write me an email. Again, there's resources for you on the Staging University. So I want to make sure that you've accessed the Staging U with your email and password that you were taught in class. And even on the IHOS site, there's additional information for you. So, tap into all of that. And you can come to conference. We have wonderful conferences every year. There are chapter meetings you can participate in. So, you can be as involved, as much or little as you want to be involved with what you do. And certainly in the future, if you decide that you'd like to have a staging business, then we would have you go through the third day and apply what was paid for the ASA, whether you paid for it or worked it off with someone else, that would be deducted from the tuition. And in that class, you would learn all the pricing, how to run a business, how to do proposals and consultations, and so forth. And some of you actually may learn some of this with your company owners. The reason we don't go into a lot of detail with assistants is because I don't want to dictate how you should be working with the company, because they're going to have their own processes and expectations. You may be doing a lot more than other assistants, and some assistants might be doing less. So it just really depends on how they need you and how they're going to use you and what they expect from you. And the best thing I can tell you is get everything in writing up front as far as expectations for what you'll be doing, your role, your position descriptions, and your income and what you can expect to earn. So, negotiate or identify all of that up front so there's no questions. And then as you grow in your role, hopefully they'll be able to move you into additional things and increase the value and pay you more, which would be great. So with that, I'm going to sign off now. And again, please feel free to reach out to me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you are watching this. And I hope to meet you in person sometime at our conference or a class. Thanks so much, you guys. And I thank you for being part of the Staged Homes and IHOS families. Bye-bye.